If you don't know what you want, maybe a good place to start is with what you don't want. I realized after yesterday's video that I asked y'all some big questions. What is it that you really want? And who are you really? That may be too big of a jump for you. So let's go in and take a couple steps back. And let's go find some clues by continuing to read Be Like Water, My Friend by Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon Lee. Throughout the past couple videos, we've been talking about discernment and figuring out what speaks true to who we really are, and recognizing that we're attempting to retain our true nature by being a part of nature, like water is. And Shannon reminds us that water stagnates and evaporates when it's not given what it's needed to be itself. So think about that. Water stagnates. What does stagnate mean? It stops, it slows down, there's no movement, or it evaporates into thin air when it's not given what it's needed to be itself. So like even reading that out loud, asking ourselves like, what is it that we need to be ourselves? Recognizing that all of nature needs something for it to be exactly as it is. And something like water, a life-giving resource, and also a life-taking resource. So when we don't know what we want, again, recognizing like that's a big question and realizing I don't have my mic in front of me. Wowza. Okay, we get to start all over. All right. Look at that. Yep. Now the mic is in front of me. There it is, y'all. You can hear me now, can't ya? Yeah. Sheesh. Just start all over. I'm laughing. I'm laughing. Okay. Just reading that, I'm thinking about if we're a part of nature and all of this is a part of nature, what does each living being need to be itself? And that's such a big question to think about. I'm asking myself now, I'm like, what is it that I need to be myself? What is it that you need to be yourself? And so for water, water needs movement and connection to its source. And so I'm thinking for me, do I need movement and connection to my source? Absolutely. But what else do I need to like be myself? Let's be honest, for a lot of us at this point, it's coffee. Speaking of coffee, cheers to you. Another thing that I need to be myself is a comfortable, cozy, less stimulating space. I am super distracted in a lot of spaces nowadays, whether it's through the music or the junk light, the seating. Yeah, it's tough being in public right now because there's a lot going on and I don't feel like myself when I'm in a lot of spaces. And yeah, so I'm just like thinking out loud. I'm like, what else do I need to be myself, right? We need to be fully taken care of, right? We need food, we need water, have we used the restroom, things of that sort. But of course, that's on like a very basic need level. So I want to take a step even further, right? What is it that we need as a part of nature, as living beings of part of nature to be ourselves? What is it that we surround ourselves with? What is it that we consume? Who is it that we are hanging out with? What is it about them that allows us to be ourselves? Definitely something worth thinking about. I would love to hear one thing that you feel like you need to be yourself in the comments below. But let's continue. So water needs movement and connection to its source. And so in order for us to reach our own experience, we need to be learning from what's around us. We need to be in full flowing connection to assess and to pursue the energy that makes us feel most alive and good and essentially ourselves. And this is a lot of what we've been talking about in these past few videos. Is how do we be intentional and conscious of the things that make us feel truly alive? As you all know, my number one culprit is our digital devices. As I've been coming for it, it sometimes makes us feel alive, but I also feel like that's a lie. It feels like cotton candy to me. It feels like I'm eating something, but it's not really satiating me. It feels like popcorn and it feels like an empty fullness and it doesn't truly feel like soul food. And so, yeah, it might convince us and distract us of feeling like we're alive in the moment because we're being stimulated with dopamine, but like truly alive, like in our bodies, like in our emotions. A reminder of feeling alive for me is when I experience goosebumps. I'm like, ooh, like, it's such like a subtle tingly feeling that only, you can feel it. Unless someone's really looking at your skin, can't witness it on you. Of course, if you're crying or angry or experiencing other emotions, like it's a little bit more overt depending on how much you allow it to show. But goosebumps, I'm just like, all right, I'm still here. And that is communicating something to me, right? And so then hoping that it's communicating something good and that it's reminding me of something that makes me feel essentially ourselves. And so let's continue. Understanding your ignorance. So the tricky part of researching your own experience is that we often don't understand our own ignorance. What is our own ignorance? It is a lack of understanding of our true selves, our soul, as it were. When I read our soul, as it were, it makes me think of who we were before the world told us who to be, before they put on all of these labels, roles, and identities on us. We do not understand what part we play in the creation of our lives, so we point the finger outward rather than in. I'm going to read that again. We do not understand what part we play. If we have roles, we have a part to play in the creation of our lives. We have a role in the creation of our lives. However our lives are playing out, we have a role in that. We have stake in that. We have responsibility in that. So we point the finger outward, the system, the people, my parents, the priest, the church, my family, my siblings, my friends, the university, rather than in. And that problem comes from ego. I want to note that I think there's an old definition, and it's not true, but there's an older definition of ego that we sometimes can connect to, like overly arrogant or overly brashly confident, that they're like egotistical. I think that's one definition, right? You look at the English Limited Dictionary definition, is that's one line of a definition. But I feel like what she's talking about here is the second line of ego. We should probably look it up together, actually, just to be more clear. A person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance boosts to my ego. So the source: self-esteem, self-importance, self-worth, self-respect, self-conceit, self-image, self-confidence. And even reading this, right, it's like, okay, like it's important to have self-esteem, self-importance, self-worth, self-respect. A person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance, right? So maybe sometimes when we hear the word ego, maybe we're looking at words like egotistical, excessively conceited or absorbed in oneself, self-centered, right? Egotist, a person who is excessively conceited or self-absorbed. A self-seeker, egotism, the practice of talking and thinking about oneself excessively because of an undue sense of self-importance. Egomaniac, a person who is obsessively egotistical or self-centered. Egoism is another term for egotism. So let's go to egotism. The practice of talking and thinking about oneself excessively because of an undue sense of self-importance. Let's go to ego trip. An activity done in order to increase one's sense of self-importance. Ego ideal, the part of the mind which imposes on itself concepts of ideal behavior developed from parental and social standards. And then going back to ego, a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. So the many that we went through, I think that's what we typically think of when we think of ego. But recognizing there's actually another part of ego that is also, I would say, is getting a lot of attention too. But look at all of these words rooted in ego. So again, as we're going through this book, it's important to critically think and to research and to find the resources that can give you a better understanding of learning about what's around us, not only in the physical world, but even like in the non-tangible speaking, in the ways that people are using language, in the ways that people are talking, in the ways that people are expressing themselves. Recognizing that what we just read, that it's a sense of self-esteem, right? A sense of self-importance, and that there's nothing wrong with ego. I think that's how we've used in the past, is like that it's this bad thing. But again, just with anything, it's when it's in excess. It's when it's being abused in a way, when it's just overly the top and imbalanced. When we think of ego, it's recognizing that it's a part of us. Exactly what we were talking about, the ego ideal. You're saying it's a part of who we are and how we interact with the world, right? What I'm trying to say is that ego is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that we have used it in a bad way for a long time. So as we continue to read this and she uses the word ego, keep that in mind. So let's continue. We frequently think we know what we want or what path we should be going down because our ego tells us what we want, because our ego tells us what it thinks is best for us. So I'm like thinking to myself, how is an ego developed? And it's developed by who we're surrounded by. It's developed by our environment. It's developed by our society. It's developed by what we consume and what we've been given access to consume as young people. Gary Sukov, in his book, The Seed of the Soul, paints this as a struggle between the wants and needs of the personality versus those of the soul. So how do we tell the difference between what is of our ego and what is of our soul or essence? One indicator that the ego is in the driver's seat rather than your soul is the word should. If your decisions come from a place of should much of the time, then you're not necessarily being guided by your true, essential self. You may be giving up your authority to whomever is saying that you should do something: your parents, your partner, your teacher, your religion, society, etc. Another time to watch out for the ego is whenever you find yourself overly interested in how you're perceived. Let's backtrack real quick. So going back to, if you don't know what you want, then maybe a good place to start is what you don't want. And so asking yourself, when you hear the word should from any of those people listed, what is it in your body that you feel that you should be doing something? When someone says that you should break up with this person, or you should go to this school, or you should get good grades, or you should be on your screens less, or even for me, or you should have a better relationship with your device. And the bigger question is, when you hear that word should, do you make the decision in accordance to that should? Or do you make the decision based off of what you actually want? So for instance, when it comes to choosing a college, maybe your parents or your family and guardians and teachers are saying, you should go to this top tier school because if you go to this school, you will get better. But there's this other school that you want to go to that's more of a liberal arts school or an art school in general. But they're telling you you should go here and you end up going there. Then that's how you know that you're making a decision more so based off of ego than off of your soul's desires. Another time to watch out for the ego is whenever you find yourself overly interested in how you are perceived. The ego comes through in the image you have of yourself and the attachment you have to be identified a specific way by others, i.e., your reputation. If you worry about what others think of you, if you need people to think you're a nice person, if you never want to be the bad guy, if you need to have the fancy house and car, then your ego is hard at work. Now, there's nothing wrong with having nice things or being a nice person, but does this drive how you act to the detriment of your peace of mind? Do you obsess over what others think and feel about you? Do you do things you don't really want to do because you need to be perceived a certain way? Is your self-worth dependent on external circumstances? I said this in yesterday's video. The reason why I wasn't showing up on the internet was because I was too rooted in my ego. I was too rooted in wanting to be perceived as someone who had it all figured out, who had it all together. I was never necessarily going for perfection, but I wanted to feel like I have solved as many problems as I possibly could before I can show up online to be quote unquote credible or an authority or an expert, all these silly words that we're using right now. And feeling like I had to have a reason, I had to have some sort of certification, I had to have something to show for before showing up online. And so I can sit here now being like, oh, for sure was rooted in ego. A big thing that I was stuck on was like wanting to be a good person. Like I think I moved in a way that I didn't want people to see my shadows. I didn't want people to see the bad sides of me. I didn't want people to see the sides of me I haven't tended to. I didn't want people to see my impatience and my temperament and my judgment and my criticalness. Felt like I couldn't show up on here because I didn't have anything to show for. I had to convince myself otherwise to be here right now and be like, actually, you showing up online really doesn't have as much to do with you as you think it does. And for me, it was just a practice of like, how do I get out of my own way? Like realizing that I just wanted to express my soul's desires. And again, separating my soul's desires from my personality and from my ego and showing up anyways. because I had this like deep seated feeling that if I didn't show up on here, if I didn't express myself in this way, then I would literally go crazy. And I say this as someone like I have been journaling since the third grade, and it's to the point where it's like not enough anymore. It's like a drug that doesn't work anymore, and I'm not saying that's not what journaling was for me, but like I think I've gotten to the point in my journey that there's things in my journal that is meant to be just kept for me. But I was like processing all of life in my journal, and that's totally okay. But I think it also put me in a sense of isolation and loneliness because I wasn't able to share with others what I was trying to process and what I was trying to learn also in the process. How many times I've had like, big moments of reflection and breakthrough, and it was something that I was excited about and I wanted to share it with somebody else. But there were times where I didn't have someone else to share it with. And so the internet was there, and I'm grateful for the internet being there because it serves as an outlet. As a kid who talks a lot, there's not necessarily a lot of outlets for us. I know that seems counterintuitive, but if you're not a singer or a rapper or, a wordsmith or a writer, yeah, there's just not a lot of places where you can express yourself fully and completely for as long as you do or I do. And it feels sufficient enough to the soul that it can like sigh in relief. You're like, ah, okay, I feel fully expressed. And so to be honest, even showing up on these videos, each time that I create a video, I'm in the practice of asking myself, like, is this rooted in my ego or is this rooted in my personality and some sort of self-serving self-esteem? Or is this rooted in service and wanting to help the other person on the other side? And I'm going to sit here and be honest, it's both. I think that's okay. I think that's what I've been trying to work through is that if I came on here and it's like always about serving you and serving others and giving, 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 then that actually to me, like there's no balance in that. It's like if you just keep giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, eventually, then like you're completely depleted. At what point are you receiving? At what point are you able to recoup what you're giving? So it's like for me, it's like this cycle of giving and receiving, giving and receiving. When I show up on here, is it to help someone else on their journey or is it for me to process what's going on in mine? And for me, it's both. And being okay with that, being okay with being honest about that. And that's what I've been trying to express is that if it was really coming on here to be like, I'm of service of you, I'm in 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 service of you, at what point talking to this void of the internet, like, will I get to use this medium and platform to be like, well, there's actually just something I really want to say. It's something that's been bugging me. It's something that's been on my heart. It's something that's not being said. And I'm going to use this platform to say it, recognizing the responsibility that comes with that. Let's continue. Once we've determined if we're operating from our ego self rather than our true self, how do we take it a step further to understand the cause of our own ignorance, especially if we are in fact ignorant of the source of the problem in the first place? Discovering our ignorance is actually a deep concept in Buddhist texts, looking at how we suffer because we place our happiness, or lack thereof, on attachments to things outside of ourselves. My father often spoke about this. Discovering our ignorance requires a lot of self-awareness and honesty, but it's possible to do even if we are not yet totally self-aware. We just need to decide to really look. So where to begin? One place you can start is with the shoulding. Listen to yourself and observe how you feel when someone presents you with a choice and you feel a should coming on. Your parent wants you to come home for Thanksgiving. You have the thought you should go. How does that should make you feel? Alive or muted? If it makes you feel energized, then your should is actually an expression of your true self, and therefore not a should, but a recognition of something that is essential to you. Family time, travel, etc. It's an expression of your heart. But if it makes you feel heavy or shut down, even just a little bit, that's something to take a look at. Why aren't you excited? Why does it feel heavy? Investigate. It may not change the decision, but it can illuminate the cause and help you give more clarity and more freedom. It can help you get to the bottom of what's of value to you and where you might need to do some work. The whole point of this video, again, is recognizing that, like, it's okay if you don't know what you want. That's a huge question. And a lot of times what we want has been imposed on us from people outside of us, from influences outside of us. And this, I think now more than ever, it's really difficult to discover what is it that we truly want and who we truly want to be. And so, at the very least, if you don't know where to start in the things that you do want, maybe a good place to start is in the things that you don't want or in the type of person you don't want to be. And to ask yourself, at what points were you influenced where you've made decisions based off of a should? That you should go to this school or you should have these friends or you should have this kind of partner. And I want to note in here that she says, of course, some of the things that are actually good for you come with shoulds too, like I should eat better or I should exercise. These shoulds may be exactly what you need, but because you are shoulding them and or pushing them away and ignoring them, they can feel heavy and therefore need to be examined. And perhaps it's not the eating or the exercising that's actually the issue, but your core wounds that are keeping you from showing up for yourself, wounds you continue to ignore. I really love the indicator when you hear the word should. It's so clear and concise. And so I encourage you, next time you're in conversation with someone, next time you're in conversation with yourself, next time you consume content and you hear someone say, you should do this or any other kind of shoulding, that's a moment to take a beat and ask yourself in that moment, how do I feel in that should? Do I feel alive? Do I feel energized? Cool, then that's what my heart desires. Or do I feel guilty? Or do I feel shame? Or do I feel disappointed or unenergized? Well, maybe I should deny that request. And so I'm telling you here, and in reminder of me as I continue to make these videos for you, that there is no shoulding here. I'm just giving you what worked for me. I'm going to trust that you know yourself enough, that you know what's best for you and your path. So even if you hear it from me, if it slips out of my mouth that you should do something, also have that discernment and be like, okay, like I'm watching this YouTuber's video, I'm watching K Short's video, and she just said should. Her last video or whenever you watch this video, she said to practice discernment when she says the word should. And so I'm going to take a moment and ask myself, when K Short or anybody else I watch, consume, or interact with, when they say should, do I agree with it? Do I feel energized with it? Does it feel like aligned with what I truly want, desire, and who I want to be? Or do I feel the opposite of that? And in that moment, how can I stay true to myself and make the decision that's best for me? Despite what my parents say, despite what K Short says, despite what my family says, despite what my friends say, how can I make the decision that's best for me? But that's the thing, right? Like this goes back to yesterday's video, is like taking the time to get to know ourselves, to practice self-awareness. Because if we are so rooted in our ego, then we'll continue to make decisions based off of our ego. If we're not getting to know our true soul's essence and desires, then it's going to be difficult to make those decisions. But like I said, those are big questions. If we don't know what we want, if we don't know what our soul wants, then maybe a good place to start is asking yourself what you don't want, what you don't want to experience, who you don't want to be. This is the suggested action item for you. Make a list. I would say get a big piece of paper, fold it like a hot dog, and on one side of the hot dog, you're going to write who I want to be. And then on the other side, don't worry about the writing, but on the other side is what do I want? And so on one side of it, write down the things that start with the things you don't want. I don't want to go to that school. I don't want to be friends with this person anymore. I don't want to be in this relationship. I don't want to eat that kinds of food anymore. I don't want to listen to that kind of music anymore. I don't want to read these kinds of books. I don't want to take the metro anymore. I don't want to have these kinds of conversations. I don't want to wear these kinds of clothes anymore. I don't know what it is about our brains or maybe the ways that we've been conditioned, but unfortunately, I find it a lot easier to identify the things that I don't want than the things I do want. And so hopefully what you don't want then gives you clues to the things that you do want. Okay, cool. So then write down, then what kind of clothes would you rather wear? Then what kind of conversations would you rather have? Then what kind of books would you like to read? And recognizing like this is the exploratory part, right? This part is the investigative part, and this is the exploratory part. These are like your desires of what your soul wants to experience, and you taking a moment to ask those bigger questions of yourself. And then on the other side, this is when it gets a little bit tough. It's saying, okay, who would I like to be? Okay, well, it's a lot easier to be like, who do I not want to be? Okay, for a lot of people, it's like, I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be impatient. I don't want to be judgmental and critical, self centered. I don't want to be egotistical. Okay. So then who would you like to be then? I just want to note it's really easy to discount this version of ourselves, our shadow selves, right? And all of our vices. And it's really easy to want to be like, I always want to be this person. But I will say from my own experience that me not honoring my whole self and honoring that I have all of this as currently a part of me and that I'm exploring and investigating and researching and connecting the dots. I can't speak for anybody but myself. I don't know if it's 100,000% possible to fully be always in the good, always in the highest desired state. I think this is where the Jesuses and the Buddhas of the world lived. And I don't think that that's not attainable. I just don't know for me, I speak for myself in this lifetime. So I think for me, I'm just in practice of like honoring my whole self and this human experience and just being like, okay, like as opposed to ignoring this, I ignored this part of myself for so long. I'm just at a point where I'm like, okay, girl, like she exists. Stop pretending she's not there. Stop pretending to be like this holy good person all the time. Stop always being on your best behavior and pretending like that your shit don't stink. Okay. And so now I'm like in the honoring of her and be like, okay, girl, what's up? What you want to talk about? What you want to go through? What you want to work on? Or do you just want to sit here? Be acknowledged that you exist and that you're here. Okay, we'll sit here. We'll sit here in this mess. And that's okay too. I think for me, it's the practice of like, how can I make as many decisions as possible in accordance with this side? It's not going to happen 100% of the time. Man, you're lucky if it's going to happen 50% of the time. But for me, that's the idea, the aim, you know? With that said, just talking about that last part is inspiring me to want to make the next video because the next video, actually, Shannon Lee talks about ignorance and ignoring. And because I said that I was ignoring this side of myself, that actually was a level of holding myself back in a way, holding myself from showing up on the internet, holding myself back from being in relationship with certain people, holding me back from certain friendships, holding me back from certain opportunities because I felt like I had to show up perfectly. In the next video, we're going to explore more of that according to Shannon Lee in Be Like Water. So if that's something that you're interested in, then I would suggest do the action item first just to give us some context as to where we're at, some investigative practices within ourselves. And then when you're done with that, I'd love for you to share a takeaway from that activity in the comments below. And then join me in the next video where we're going to be talking about ignorance and self-discovery towards self-awareness. But if I don't see you all in that video, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to watch this one. I hope that it supports you in your journey. Again, if you don't know what you want, then start with what you don't want. And hopefully that will guide you on a path that's most true to your soul's essence and not your ego. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye now.